When first applied, it appears that a layer mask doesn't do much of anything. This is because it's completely white. Let's take a look. When we first apply the mask, we see that it attaches itself to whichever layer was active and doesn't appear to change the project at all. We can imagine this to be like a very well lit room. We have turned the lights on in this mask and everything is visible. Watch what happens when we choose the paint bucket and change the color of the mask to black. We now see nothing at all. What's happening here? It's almost as if you have actually turned the lights off on the picture. To make this concept more clear, I'm going to add a blank layer and paint it black as well. I'll bring this underneath the mask layer and now suddenly we see black. With the mask layer active again, I can actually toggle between black and white using the X key. When I use white, I see the picture. When I use black, I only see black. Now let's see what happens when we lower the opacity of the paint bucket or even use a gradient. Imagine this to be like pulling a curtain over the room where it becomes partially lit. I'm going to begin by adding a layer mask, which you can see by default is white. I'm going to switch from the paint bucket to the gradient tool and then check my settings. I'm going to actually turn my opacity down, maybe somewhere in the 60 range, so I can give the illusion that it's partially lit. Starting from right to left, I'm going to pull across and you can see it looks like part of the room is darkened. If we turn off the black layer that's underneath it all, you can see that it's not actually painting it black. It's just eliminating some of the visibility of the layer. That's what a layer mask really does. Layer masks allow you to be in control of which parts of an image are visible. It also allows you to show other images or colors underneath that image. Lastly, if you'd like to, it allows you to get part of your image back or even change the visibility as you go through your project. In one last illustration of this concept, let's imagine that we're shining a flashlight on just one area of the image. We can achieve this effect using a layer mask and the brush tool. You can see that I've deleted my previous layer mask and I'm going to go ahead and apply a new one. We're going to go back to the paint bucket and paint this mask solid black. We're now going to switch to the brush tool. This is the primary tool you'll likely use when working with layer mask. You can use the bracket keys to change the size of the brush, which you'll do often when working with mask. Now let's check two settings before we begin. First, the opacity of our brush. For now, we're going to leave it at 100%. Next, let's check the hardness. Notice that mine is all the way down at 0. Yours may have started at 100, but let's go to 0. The hardness is how hard or soft the edge is. The easiest way to explain this is to show it. So let's get white and click anywhere on the mask. You see that I revealed just one part of the picture. What's going on here? We can think of it like I've shined the light on that area of my image. If we hide the black layer again, we can see that it is actually just exposing some of the image. When you use white on a mask, it is always to show, as if the lights are on. When you use black on a mask, it is to hide. We can use this simple analogy of turning lights off and on to understand and remember how to work with layer masks. Layer masks are perfect for those irregular shapes that would be difficult to isolate with typical selection tools. In this image of my sister, the outer edge of her hair would be challenging if not impossible with the Quick Select, wand, or lasso. But let's start there. Using the Quick Select, I'm going to get a head start on creating my layer mask. With the area selected, I'll choose the Add Layer Mask option in my Layers panel. From this starting point, we will need the brush tool to help us perfect our edges. Zooming in, I'm going to start with white in order to show more of her hair. Checking my settings, I'm going to start in the high 70s for opacity and about half hardness. These settings will be specific to the needs of your project, and you may need to experiment. This process isn't instant. It takes patience and a lot of back and forth adjustments to your mask to achieve great results. One of the biggest benefits of using layer masks to refine selections is the ability to go back and forth, revealing and hiding areas of the image using black or white. Remember that the X key will allow you to toggle quickly. Another great feature to use, especially with hair or distant foliage, is shrinking your brush size to create the illusion of individual strands. For this, it is best to also reduce your opacity and hardness as the brush size goes down. In this project, I've used the technique to soften the outside lines. To sum up, when using a layer mask to make selections, you will frequently change your brush's size, opacity, and hardness. Throughout this process, you will toggle between black and white often. Let me show you the finished mask I created earlier. To view the mask in isolation, simply hold down Alt while clicking on the mask itself in the Layers panel. You can see the wide variety of brush techniques I used to create a realistic selection. Next, I'm going to show you how to use layer masks to make selective adjustments. Adjustments are anything from this menu that allows you to alter the overall look or feel of the project. For example, if you choose a hue and saturation adjustment, you can take the saturation all the way down to create a black and white image. To create a more artistic effect, I'm going to use a layer mask to control which parts of my image are fully black and white. Let's hold that thought for a moment and turn off the visibility so I can give you a shortcut view of what the end result will be. You can see I've softly brought back color into certain areas of the image. So how do you do this? Let's turn the visibility of our black and white adjustment back on. Remember the analogy we used earlier of turning the lights off and on certain parts of the image. In this case, in order to not see some of the property we've chosen, black and white, we will need to stamp black on parts of the image. Using our brush at about 50% opacity and 0 hardness, we'll resize our brush to fit the desired area using the bracket keys and click once. I'll do the same on the other side. Remember, the greatest benefit of a layer mask is its flexibility. I'm going to soften the effect by turning my brush opacity down and restamping the area with white to show more of the black and white property. Using Alt-click to inspect the mask, you can see we've created almost a reverse flashlight effect. A layer mask may be mostly black or mostly white, depending on the look you're going for. I'll finish off the look by bringing some color back to some other areas of the image. Here's another look at the finished result, which I carefully blended for subtlety. Other uses for this technique might include brightening or recoloring hair or eyes, or whitening teeth, and even more. The final technique I'm going to show you is called double exposure. Just like it sounds, double exposure is when you show parts of 2 or more images on one canvas. Picking up where we left off, we're going to start by placing the other image inside this Photoshop file. Choose File, Place Embedded, and choose your second photo. I've selected this beautiful wildflower photo taken recently by a good friend here in Colorado. Move the new layer on top of your main subject in the Layers panel. Don't forget to right-click and choose Rasterize Layer so you can edit it. Next, in order to get the alignment I want, I'm going to temporarily turn the opacity of the image down. Use Ctrl-T, or transform, to change the size and position. Now we'll add a layer mask so we can begin creatively incorporating the two photos. Using my brush tool at full opacity or close to it, I'm going to start by covering the parts of the image I'm sure I don't want to see with the black in the mask. From here, the process is very much like we covered in Section 1 about refining selections. I'll continuously change the size, opacity, and hardness of my brush, and as well toggle between black and white. Choosing which parts of each image to show and hide is where the artistry comes in. Here I'd like to see her eye while still keeping some of the flower's center texture. If you feel that your images aren't quite blending harmoniously, try and experiment with some blend modes. Another option is to go back to your primary image and manipulate its layer mask as well. To achieve the finished result, I placed the same image file into the project 3 more times and added and edited unique layer masks for each one. Using Alt-Click, I'll show them to you. To sum up, today I've demonstrated how to use Layer Mask 2, refine selections, make selective adjustments, and create double exposure effects. Thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any feedback in the comments.